The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the low hum of 1,000 different species conversing in their native tongues. Translator devices worked overtime as delegates from across the known galaxy gathered for what many considered the most important session in galactic history. The massive crystalline structure floating in the void between three star systems had been constructed specifically for this purpose, to decide the fate of the newest species to achieve faster-than-light travel. Ambassador Zix Thala of the Centauri Collective tapped her four-fingered hand against the smooth surface of her console, her elongated skull gleaming under the artificial lights. Around her, representatives from dozens of civilizations waited with barely contained anticipation. The Aquatic Federation's delegate floated in his specialized tank, gills fluttering nervously. The silicon-based Crystalline Empire's ambassador stood motionless, their geometric form refracting light in complex patterns that conveyed their emotional state to those who knew how to read them. At the center of the chamber, a holographic display showed a modest yellow star with 9 planets orbiting it. The third planet from the star appeared highlighted in red, a warning color that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "The species calls itself human," announced Chancellor Mordeth, his deep voice carrying the authority of his position as head of the Galactic Council. The ancient being had presided over first contact protocols for over 3 centuries, and his experience was legendary. They have achieved basic FTL capability approximately 57 of their years ago, and have established colonies on 17 worlds within their local cluster. A collective murmur rippled through the assembly. 57 years was remarkably fast expansion for a newly spacefaring species. Most civilizations took at least 2 centuries to establish more than a handful of colonies after achieving FTL travel. "What are their technological capabilities?" asked Director Vash of the Mechanical Synthesis, their robotic form clicking and whirring as they processed data streams. "Do they possess weapons of mass destruction?" Chancellor Mordeth's expression grew grim. "They possess nuclear weapons, antimatter devices, and have recently developed what they call singularity bombs. Weapons that create miniature black holes. Their military vessels, while primitive by our standards, are heavily armed and appear to be designed with one purpose in mind: warfare." The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. The peaceful assembly of Herxian's representative, a being that resembled a walking flower, trembled visibly. Warfare? But surely they must have evolved beyond such primitive behavior to achieve space travel? "Negative," Mordeth replied, consulting his datapad. "According to our long-range observations, the humans achieved spaceflight while actively engaged in what they call World War III. They built their first FTL ships in orbital shipyards, while their homeworld was still recovering from nuclear devastation. Their expansion into space appears to have been driven not by curiosity or peaceful exploration, but by resource acquisition and military advantage." Ambassador Zix Thala felt a chill run down her spine. Her own species had been pacifists for over a millennium, having learned the futility of war through bitter experience. The idea of a species that continued warfare while reaching for the stars seemed almost incomprehensible. "What of their biology?" inquired Dr. Fellnox of the Academic Consortium, their tentacles writhing with nervous energy. "Surely, they cannot be naturally aggressive. Most predator species mellow significantly upon achieving sapience." The Chancellor's next words sent shockwaves through the assembly. "Humans are persistence hunters, evolved from pack-hunting omnivores on a death world classified as Class 12, hazardous. Their homeworld experiences regular seismic activity, extreme weather patterns, and harbors numerous species that could single-handedly threaten most of our civilian populations. The humans consider many of these creatures pets or livestock." A data stream appeared on every delegate's console, showing images captured by long-range surveillance drones. The assembly watched in horrified fascination as humans engaged in activities that would be considered extreme sports by most galactic civilizations. Climbing sheer rock faces without safety equipment, diving into turbulent waters filled with massive predators, and engaging in combat sports for entertainment. "They call it recreation," Mordeth continued. "What's more concerning is their response to danger. Where most species flee from threats, humans appear to become more aggressive when cornered. They have a saying, "When the going gets tough, the tough get going." Our xenobiologists believe this refers to their tendency to increase their efforts when faced with adversity. The representative of the ethereal collective, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering field, pulsed with concern. Have they made any attempts at peaceful contact with galactic civilization? They have sent several exploratory vessels toward the galactic core, but these appear to be scouting missions rather than peaceful expeditions. Each vessel is heavily armed and shows signs of military organization. More troubling, they have established what appear to be fortified positions on several worlds along the galactic rim. Ambassador Zeke Thala accessed her species' historical database, searching for parallels. The last time the galaxy had faced a potentially aggressive spacefaring species was over 800 years ago. The Dominion crisis that had nearly torn the galactic community apart. The scars from that conflict still influenced galactic policy. "What are our options?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Chancellor Mordeth's expression was grave as he outlined the possibilities. The Defense Committee has prepared several scenarios. Option 1. We initiate first contact and attempt to integrate them into galactic society through careful diplomacy and cultural exchange. However, given their apparent militaristic nature, this carries significant risk. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. Option 2. We establish a quarantine zone around human space, preventing them from expanding beyond their current territory while monitoring their development. This would require a significant military presence and could be seen as an act of aggression. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Admiral Corvex of the United Defense Fleet spoke, his scarred reptilian features betraying years of military service. "And option 3? And option 3? Option 3, Mordeth said quietly, is preemptive action. We have the technological advantage. One coordinated strike could end the human threat before it becomes a galactic crisis." The chamber erupted in heated debate. Voices rose in dozens of languages as species argued their positions. The peaceful assembly advocated for immediate diplomatic contact, believing that all species could be reasoned with. The warrior clans surprisingly argued against military action, claiming that honorable combat could only occur between equals, and the technological gap made such action dishonorable. Ambassador Zeke Thala found herself torn between her people's pacifist nature and the practical concerns raised by the intelligence reports. The humans seemed to represent everything her civilization had moved beyond: violence, aggression, and conquest. Yet something nagged at her about the approach they were considering. "Have we considered," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos, "that our very discussion of these options might be exactly what led to their aggressive development? If they detected our surveillance, if they know we're out here watching them, wouldn't that explain their military preparations?" The chamber fell silent as delegates considered this possibility. It was Dr. Fellnox who voiced what many were thinking. "You suggest they know we exist and are preparing for war with us. I suggest they might be preparing to defend themselves from us," Zixthala clarified. "Consider their perspective. They achieve spaceflight and immediately detect evidence of advanced civilizations that have been watching them but making no contact. How would any of our species react to such a situation?" Chancellor Mordeth consulted his data again, his expression growing more troubled. "Our long-range sensors have detected increased activity in human space over the past 5 years. They've constructed what appear to be defense platforms around their major colonies and have established what our military analysts describe as fortress worlds. Heavily fortified planets with orbital defenses that would challenge even our most advanced warships." The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. The humans weren't just expanding. They were preparing for a war that hadn't started yet. A war with an enemy they had never met but somehow knew existed. Admiral Corvex leaned forward, his tactical mind already working through the scenarios. If they know we're here, if they've been preparing for conflict, then our options have changed significantly. A species that's had 57 years to prepare for galactic war, using technology developed specifically for fighting superior forces. He didn't need to finish the thought. Every military strategist in the chamber understood the implications. The humans had been given time. Time to study whatever evidence of galactic civilization they had found. Time to develop countermeasures. Time to turn their entire society into a war machine, pointed at the stars. "There's something else," Mordeth announced, his voice heavy with foreboding. 3 days ago, our monitoring stations detected a massive energy signature from human space. Analysis suggests they've tested a weapon of unknown design with a yield approximately 10 times greater than anything in our records. The chamber descended into stunned silence. 10 times greater than anything in galactic records meant a weapon that could potentially crack a planet's crust or destabilize a star. The humans weren't just preparing for war. They were preparing to fight with weapons that could reshape the galaxy itself. Ambassador Zix Thala felt a cold certainty settle in her chest. Whatever decision they made in this chamber, whatever course of action they chose, would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the future of galactic civilization itself. The humans had been left alone for 57 years, and in that time, they had become something unprecedented. A species that had weaponized their isolation and turned it into an advantage. As the debate raged around her, one thought echoed in her mind. They might already be too late to stop what they had inadvertently created. The galaxy's arrogance in believing they could simply observe and decide the fate of a young species had given birth to something they were no longer certain they could control. The vote would be taken within the hour, but Zix Thala suspected that regardless of the outcome, the galaxy would never be the same. The humans were coming, ready or not, and they were bringing weapons that defied comprehension and a warrior's mindset forged in the crucible of knowing they stood alone against the stars. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, her hands clasped behind her back as she stared out at the swirling colors of hyperspace through the reinforced viewport. The massive dreadnought was the flagship of the Terran Defense Fleet, and currently leading a formation of 300 vessels toward coordinates that had been burned into human consciousness for the past 6 decades. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Commander Torres from the communications station. "We're receiving the final confirmation signals from all fleet elements. Operation Reckoning is a go." Chen nodded grimly. Operation Reckoning, the culmination of 60 years of preparation, planning, and technological development. 60 years since the first detection of artificial signals from the galactic core. 60 years since humanity realized they were not alone, and that whoever was out there had been watching them in silence. The discovery had changed everything. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the young radio astronomer who first detected the patterns, had spent months verifying her findings before presenting them to the United Nations. The signals were too complex to be natural phenomena, too organized to be random, and most damning of all, they showed clear signs of being surveillance transmissions focused on Earth's solar system. "Status report," Chen ordered, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 3 decades preparing for this moment. "All vessels report ready, Admiral," responded Commander Jackson, her tactical officer. "The new TIE-Tangent-class battleships are performing within parameters, and the Prometheus weapons platforms are fully charged. Long-range sensors show no immediate threats along our projected route." Chen allowed herself a moment of pride as she reviewed the fleet composition on her command display. Humanity had learned much in 6 decades of knowing they were watched. The first lesson had been that whoever was out there possessed technology far beyond human capability. The second lesson was that advanced technology meant nothing if you couldn't adapt to fight an unknown enemy. The Terran Defense Force had been built on a simple principle. Assume the enemy has every possible advantage, then find ways to negate those advantages through unpredictability, adaptation, and sheer bloody-minded determination. Every ship in the fleet had been designed not just to fight, but to evolve during combat. to learn from enemy tactics, and adapt in real time. Admiral, interrupted Dr. Sarah Vance, the fleet's chief xenobiologist. I'm still not convinced this is the right approach. If these beings have been watching us for 60 years without making contact, perhaps they're waiting for us to demonstrate peaceful intentions. Chen turned to face the scientist, her expression sympathetic but firm. Doctor, with respect, we've run every simulation, analyzed every possibility. A civilization capable of maintaining surveillance across interstellar distances for 6 decades has technology we can barely comprehend. If they wanted peaceful contact, they've had ample opportunity. The fact that they've remained hidden suggests either fear or preparation for conflict. She gestured to the tactical display, showing their current position. We're not looking for a fight, Doctor. But we're going to be ready for one. Human history has taught us that being caught unprepared is a luxury we can't afford. Dr. Vance nodded reluctantly. She understood the logic, even if she didn't like it. Humanity's expansion into space had been driven by the knowledge that they were not alone, and that knowledge had shaped every decision, every technological development, every strategic choice for 3 generations. The breakthrough that made Operation Reckoning possible had come from an unexpected source. The study of quantum mechanics applied to faster-than-light communication. While the aliens possessed superior technology, they had made one crucial assumption: that humanity would develop along the same technological paths as other species. Instead, human scientists had taken a completely different approach. Rather than perfecting existing FTL technology, they had focused on quantum entanglement communication and something they called probability cascade weapons. Devices that didn't destroy targets so much as ensure that the quantum probability of the target's existence collapsed to 0. Transition to normal space in 30 seconds, announced the navigation officer. All hands, prepare for combat operations. Chen felt her heart rate increase as the familiar tension of approaching battle filled the bridge. Around her, the crew moved with practiced efficiency. Each officer focused on their responsibilities. These men and women represented the best of humanity, not just in skill and training, but in their understanding of what was at stake. The viewport flashed as the Defiance dropped out of hyperspace, and Chen found herself staring at something that defied comprehension. Stretched across the void before them was a massive construct. Not a ship or station, but what appeared to be an entire artificial solar system. Rings of metal and crystal surrounded a central structure that pulsed with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. Jesus Christ, whispered Commander Jackson, his tactical training warring with simple amazement. How is that even possible? Before Chen could respond, her communications officer spoke up, his voice tight with shock. Admiral, we're being hailed. Multiple sources, different signal types. They know we're here. Put it through, Chen ordered, settling into her command chair. After 60 years of preparation, humanity was finally going to meet their watchers. The main screen flickered and resolved into an image that made several bridge officers step back involuntarily. The being that appeared was clearly artificial, geometric patterns shifting across a crystalline face, with points of light that might have been eyes. When it spoke, the voice was translated by the ship's AI, but the underlying tone suggested something vast and ancient. Human vessels, you have violated the established quarantine zone around your species. Turn back immediately, or face the consequences. Chen felt a cold anger settle in her chest. Quarantine zone. They had been quarantined like some kind of disease. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Defiance, representing the Terran Defense Force. We demand to know by what authority you claim to quarantine human space, and why contact has been denied for 6 decades. The alien's response was immediate and chilling. You are classified as a Category Omega threat to galactic civilization. Your species' aggressive nature and rapid technological development pose an unacceptable risk to the established order. Return to your designated space, or be destroyed. Around the bridge, Chen saw her officers' expressions harden. Category: Omega. Threat. Designated space. The aliens weren't just watching humanity. They were containing them, treating them like criminals who had committed no crime other than existing. Tactical assessment, she ordered. Commander Jackson's fingers flew over his console. Multiple hostile contacts, Admiral. I'm reading at least 500 ships of various configurations. Plus, the central structure, which appears to be some kind of fortress. Energy signatures are significant. Chen nodded. The numbers were about what they had expected. Superior technology, overwhelming numerical advantage, defensive positions. Every advantage the enemy could want. It was exactly the kind of fight humanity had been preparing for. Open a channel to all vessels, she ordered. All ships. This is Admiral Chen. You've all heard what we just heard. We came here hoping for peaceful contact, but instead we find ourselves treated as criminals and prisoners. 60 years ago, humanity learned that we are not alone in the universe. Today, we make sure the universe learns that humanity will not be caged. She paused, looking around the bridge at the faces of men and women who had dedicated their lives to this moment. Activate all probability. Cascade weapons. Prepare for combat operations. Today, we either earn humanity's place in the galaxy, or we make sure the galaxy understands the price of keeping us locked away. The response from the fleet was immediate and overwhelming. 300 human vessels began powering up weapons that had never been tested in actual combat. Systems that existed nowhere else in the galaxy because no other species had spent 60 years developing technology specifically designed to fight a superior enemy. As the first shots were fired, Chen realized that whatever happened in the next few hours would determine not just humanity's future, but the future of every species in the galaxy. The Watchers had made a critical error. They had given humanity time to prepare, and time to grow angry. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you caged a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on a death world, then told them they weren't worthy of freedom. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as the battle began. But Chen found herself smiling grimly. For 60 years, humanity had wondered what lay beyond their quarantine. Now they were going to find out, one way or another. The human fleet surged forward into the teeth of the alien defenses, probability cascade weapons firing in patterns that had never been seen before in galactic warfare. Behind them, hyperspace rippled as reinforcements began arriving. Not just military vessels, but civilian ships, cargo haulers, even pleasure craft armed with improvised weapons. When the galaxy had tried to contain humanity, they had made one fatal miscalculation. They had assumed that humans would accept their cage. Instead, they had united an entire species behind a single, burning question. What gave anyone the right to deny them the stars? Today, they were going to get their answer. 3 months after the Battle of the Quarantine Wall, Ambassador Zeke Thala found herself in a place she had never expected to be. Aboard a human starship, negotiating the surrender of the Galactic Council. The irony was not lost on her as she walked through corridors that hummed with technologies that shouldn't have existed, past humans who treated her with polite professionalism, despite having every reason to hate her species. The UES Vindication was unlike any vessel in the known galaxy. Where other ships were built for efficiency and functionality, this one seemed designed to make a statement. The corridors were wide enough for multiple species to walk comfortably together. The lighting was adjustable to accommodate different visual spectrums, and the gravity could be modified section by section to ensure comfort for visiting dignitaries. It was, Zeke Thala realized, what a diplomatic vessel should look like if its builders actually cared about the comfort of other species. The fact that it was also armed with weapons capable of destroying entire fleets was apparently considered a minor detail by its human designers. Ambassador Zeke Thala greeted Admiral Chen as they entered the main conference room. Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy for any of us. The room itself was a marvel of adaptive architecture. The walls displayed real-time views of space, but could shift to show any environment that might make visiting species more comfortable. The table automatically adjusted its height and configuration as different beings took their seats. Most impressively, the air itself was filtered and adjusted to provide optimal breathing conditions for each individual present. Thala took her designated seat, noting that it had been precisely configured for her species' physiology. Around the table sat representatives from a dozen major galactic civilizations, many of whom she recognized from the council session 3 months ago. All of them wore expressions of shock, defeat, and something she was having trouble identifying. "Before we begin," Admiral Chen said, her voice carrying none of the anger Thala had expected, "I want to address something that I think is causing confusion. You're not here to discuss surrender terms. You're here to discuss the future." Director Vash of the Mechanical Synthesis clicked mechanically, their robotic form processing this information. "Admiral, our fleets have been defeated, our military capabilities neutralized. By any definition, this constitutes surrender." Chen smiled, and Thala was startled to realize it seemed genuine. "Director, 3 months ago, you tried to destroy humanity because you were afraid of us. Today, you're sitting safely aboard one of our most advanced warships, being offered refreshments and treated as honored guests. Does that sound like the behavior of a species interested in conquest?" The question hung in the air as the assembled delegates considered it. Dr. Fellnox tentacled nervously as he spoke. "Then what do you want from us? What are your demands?" "We want answers," Chen replied simply. "For 60 years, humanity lived with the knowledge that we were being watched, studied, and judged by civilizations we had never met. We want to know why. We want to understand how a galaxy full of supposedly advanced civilizations decided that the appropriate response to a new species was isolation and eventual extermination." Chancellor Mordeth, looking far older than he had 3 months ago, spoke slowly. "Your species showed signs of excessive aggression, rapid technological development, and an apparent disregard for peaceful coexistence. The standard protocols suggested containment until proper evaluation could be completed. 60 years, Chen said quietly. "You watched us for 60 years and never once considered making peaceful contact. In that same time, how many other species did you welcome into galactic civilization?" Mordeth consulted his datapad, his expression growing uncomfortable. 17 species achieved FTL capability during that period. All were contacted within their first year of interstellar travel and welcomed into the Galactic Council. "What made them different from us?" Chen asked, though Thala suspected she already knew the answer. "They were," Admiral Corvex admitted reluctantly. "They had evolved beyond warfare, showed no signs of territorial aggression, and their technological development followed standard patterns." Chen nodded, as if this confirmed something she had suspected. "Let me tell you a story about human development, Admiral. 5,000 years ago, my ancestors lived in small tribes that fought constantly over resources. They developed weapons, strategies, and social structures entirely focused on survival in a hostile environment. Do you know what happened to those warlike tribes? The aliens waited, unsure where this was leading. They became us," Chen continued. "They learned that cooperation was more effective than conflict, that trade was more profitable than war, and that diversity of thought and culture made them stronger. But they never forgot the lessons of their past, that the universe can be dangerous, and that sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be prepared for war." She gestured to the displays around the room, which now showed images of human colonies, cities, and cultural centers. "Humanity has been at peace for over a century. Admiral, we've built a civilization based on cooperation, scientific advancement, and cultural exchange. The only wars we've fought in the past 100 years were against those who threatened that peace." Thala felt a chill as she realized what Chen was implying. "You're saying we created the threat we were trying to prevent. I'm saying you took a species that had evolved beyond the need for constant warfare and gave them 60 years to prepare for the biggest war in their history, Chen replied. Every ship we built, every weapon we developed, every strategic decision we made was based on the knowledge that somewhere out there, advanced civilizations were planning our destruction. The truth of it hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Their careful observation, their cautious approach, their clinical evaluation of humanity's threat level, all of it had shaped human development in ways they had never considered. Dr. Felnox spoke hesitantly. The probability cascade weapons your forces used. We've never seen anything like them. Our analysts can't even understand the theoretical basis for their operation. Chen's expression grew thoughtful. That's because you assumed we would develop along the same technological paths as other species. Instead, we started from the assumption that we would have to fight enemies with technology we couldn't understand, using resources we didn't have. So we developed technology based on entirely different principles. She activated a small device on the table, and a holographic display appeared, showing technical schematics that made the alien scientists lean forward with fascination and horror. Probability cascade weapons don't destroy matter. They alter the quantum probability that matter exists in a particular configuration. Instead of trying to match your superior firepower, we developed weapons that make your defenses irrelevant. Instead of building bigger ships, we built ships that exist in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. Director Vash processed this information with visible strain. Impossible. The energy requirements alone would be impossible using conventional power sources, Chen agreed. But when you're facing extinction, you find ways to make the impossible work. Humanity spent 60 years developing technology specifically designed to fight opponents with superior resources and capabilities. The implications were staggering. The galactic community had created exactly the kind of threat they had been trying to prevent. But not through human aggression. Through their own fear and misunderstanding. Ambassador Zixthala found her voice. What happens now? Your forces have demonstrated clear technological superiority. You could destroy our civilizations, claim our territories. We could, Chen agreed, but we won't. The assembled delegates waited, genuinely unsure. Because that would prove you were right about us all along, Chen said simply. Humanity didn't fight its way out of your quarantine to become the monsters you thought we were. We fought to earn the right to join the galaxy as equals. She stood up, and the other humans in the room followed suit. Here's what's going to happen. The quarantine ends today. Human space is now open to any species that wants to visit, trade, or establish diplomatic relations. In return, we're offering our assistance to the galactic community. Assistance? Chancellor Mordeth asked suspiciously. You've spent so many millennia in peace that you've forgotten how to deal with real threats, Chen explained. But the galaxy is a big place, and there are threats out there that your current technology and mindset can't handle. Threats that require the kind of innovation that comes from a species that spent 60 years preparing to fight the impossible. The truth of her words was undeniable. Even as they sat in this room, reports were coming in of the mysterious signals from beyond the galactic rim, of technological artifacts that defied understanding, of aggressive probe ships that appeared and disappeared without explanation. You want us to accept you as protectors, Admiral Korvex said, his military mind grasping the implications immediately. We want you to accept us as partners, Chen corrected. Your knowledge combined with our adaptability, your resources combined with our innovation. Together, we can build something better than what either of us could achieve alone. Zixthala looked around the table at her fellow delegates. They had come here expecting to negotiate the terms of their surrender. Instead, they were being offered something unprecedented. A partnership with the species they had tried to destroy. The other species in the galaxy, she said slowly. How do we convince them that humanity can be trusted? Chen smiled again, and this time, Zixthala could see the steel beneath the diplomacy. Ambassador, 3 months ago, you tried to exterminate us with a fleet of 1,000 ships and weapons that could crack planets. Today, You're sitting safely aboard one of our vessels, being offered friendship and cooperation. I think the evidence speaks for itself. As the implications of humanity's offer sank in, Thala realized that the galaxy would never be the same. The species they had tried to contain had broken free. But instead of seeking revenge, they were offering to use their hard-won strength to protect the very civilizations that had threatened them. It was, she thought, exactly the kind of response that proved they had been wrong about humanity from the very beginning. The galaxy's arrogance had indeed created a threat, but it was a threat to complacency, to stagnation, and to the kind of thinking that assumed peaceful species couldn't also be strong ones. Admiral Chen was right about one thing. The evidence spoke for itself. And that evidence suggested that humanity's greatest threat to the galaxy wasn't their capacity for war, but their capacity to make everyone else better than they had been before. The meeting continued for hours, but Thala already knew how it would end. The galaxy would accept humanity's offer because they couldn't afford not to, and in doing so, they would finally learn the lesson that 60 years of fear and isolation had prevented them from understanding. Sometimes the most dangerous thing about a strong species isn't what they'll do to their enemies, but what they'll do for their friends.